So here we have infamous spindle number 6. It should have a tenon on both sides like that, but this one's broken off. So what are we going to do about that? Well, this is a 1/2 inch, and what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole on this side here and insert a 1/2 inch dowel. To get it square, I'm going to drill a 1/2 inch hole in this piece of wood. That'll insert into. Now this is going to be nice and square, and I can center drill. First we're going to drill a little pilot hole in the center, and I just kind of eyeballed the center of this. It's close. May not be perfect. Take it in a little bit. There we go. And then I'll probably go with 3/8 after that. Well, I realized I don't have any 1/2 inch dowel, so I decided to drill it just to 3/8. So we have a nice tight fit on this 3/8 inch dowel, and it goes about 3/4 of an inch in there, and we'll cut this off as necessary for the little shelf. And this is the other spindle with the broken tenon, and this one is still stuck in the leg, so I'm doing this with the leg and all. And we're ready to go. So back to infamous spindle number 6, we're just going to put a little putty in some of these little dog chew marks and let that dry, and we'll sand it out. We should be able to make these pretty much disappear. So what we have to do next is to get all these holes cleaned out, and it's interesting, the plywood, the plies have expanded and contracted, so I'm going to put this on the spindle sander and clean these edges off here a little bit. And this is where that tenon broke, and you can see all the glue on there. Somebody tried to just glue it. That's got to come off of there. And we'll have to drill a hole, a 3/8 inch hole, to accept this tenon right here. Okay, so we've got the edges kind of cleaned up on this now, and I do need to do a little bit of filler in a couple places here. And then I have some small delaminations of this plywood, and I'll have to glue that up. So our next step here is I've got these broken off tenons here, and I'm going to go ahead and drill that out for 3/8 on each of the sides where that failure occurred, and we'll get a hole in there to accept the new tenon. Go in about 1 inch or so, that should be plenty. So let's see if number 6 is going to work here. Yep, I think that's a pretty good repair. I'm happy with it. I've got 3 or 4 little delaminations like this. They're really not too bad, but I do want to go ahead and get some glue into these and clamp those up. So I'm just going to use the knife here and see if I can work it into the joint. And we'll get a clamp on that and move on to the next one. Take care of the squeeze out, and we're good to go. There's a bit of glue residue on this bottom here. I don't want that to affect the fit up. So I'm getting the high spots down, and I'm going to do a general sanding. Putting a real quick coat of polyacrylic on the bottom. This could be anything. I just want to seal this in case there are any odors that are coming from this. I didn't detect any, but it just seems like a good idea just in case. I'll let this dry while I have breakfast. And this is a rather dark piece to begin with, so I'm just going right back on here with some dark walnut. There are a lot of blemishes in this wood, so it kind of needs a high hide. So this dark walnut I think will be just about right. It looks good going on. And I wanted to get all these little nooks and crannies on this before I put the table back together and do the clear coat. I thought it would just make it a lot easier. This top is so dry, I could almost have just skipped the stripping step and gone to just using the sander to take it down. I have a feeling that old finish would sand off pretty readily. All right, we'll give it a few minutes. Well, some of the original finish is coming up. It's not a ton, but it's there. So I guess I'm glad I did this. It'll make it easier to get it down to, I'm gonna take it to almost bare wood. So it's good to have all that original finish off of there, I guess. Kind of impressed with the appearance of this. I believe this is a maple top now that I've got the finish off of it. Off camera, I gave everything a good sanding, try to get off some of the old drips and cut through some of the old finish. And I decided to go over everything with boiled linseed oil as a starter. When I sanded these, I realized this is probably a maple, and I brought up some of the lighter color wood on the edges, and I thought rather than restaining that I would just go over it with some linseed oil to try to highlight it, and then I can always finish over the top of that. And this wood is so dry, it really needs the oil. Well, there's all the parts with the boiled linseed oil. I kind of like the highlights on that. I think that's going to look really good when it's put together. I'll let that dry for a few hours and then we'll do a dry fit up and see about gluing the base together. I thought I would dry fit everything together now that it's more or less set up. And I could not get this thing to go together neatly. And I studied it for the longest time to figure out what was off. And what I finally sorted out is that these columns here all have a bit of a twist to them. And it's, I don't know if I can show it here. Anyway, these are off significantly, and none more than this one. It is twisted a full, I don't know, 5 or 7, 8 degrees maybe, 5 degrees, something like that, so that it will not go in its hole. So what's the solution to that? Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to cut this off, cut the top of it off, and then dowel it, and then twist this thing into position so that it's more straight. And I think if I just do this one, then everything will fall into place. All right, I've fiddled with this for a good while, and I figured out that by doing this and allowing this thing to pivot, I can put this thing back together, and it's almost exactly lined up now. It's very close to plumb. So nothing is glued yet. This is all just dry fit back together. So I think the best strategy for this is going to be to focus on this core 4 legs and get those kind of square and glued up, and then I can bring in the sides as a second phase. So I'm going to take off these outer legs here and set them aside and see if I can squarely glue up the center 4, and we'll go from there. So get that glue all over the dowel in that joint real liberal, because I want this thing to be pretty solid. All right, we got that dowel nice and coated. I'll pull that in there and then we'll get the clamp on it. All right, that's about as square as I can get it. Got it all clamped up and tied together, and we're going to let it set all night and get nice and dry before we try to put those last two pieces on. Well, it's the next morning, and the center four are all glued up, and boy, this thing is very nice and sturdy. It appears to be very square. I'm putting in the outer legs. This is not glued up yet, but this side goes in very nicely. It seems to be lined up well, but the leg on this side, there was no way that that thing was going to go back into this hole here because of the twist of the leg. So I had to cut that one and redowel it. You can see here I've got it glued up, and I cut it here and redoweled it and realigned it. So that thing should go right in there. So there's the dowel installed, and we were off about that far, and now we can straighten it out. All right, let's see what this fit up's like. And there's the final glue up. I've got paracord around the apron and a couple clamps to bring in those two side legs there. And I had one more little split in this plywood that appeared, so we've got a clamp on that. So I do believe this thing is going to be solid as a rock, baby. All right, I've released the clamps on this, and everything is square and just as solid as you could expect for a piece like this. So there's really only one other thing I'm going to do, and that is for this stretcher, I'm going to reinforce the spindle tendons where they insert into the stretcher here with 1/8 inch bamboo skewer sections that I use as little dowels. This is one of my favorite ways to reinforce small wood joints. I don't usually like to use power tools for this kind of stuff, but there were some pretty good scratches in this wood, and so I decided to power sand it in order to get those out. And quickly went to hand sanding of the edges, first some 180 and then some 220, and we're ready to put some finish on. Got all the big scratches out, but there are some little pocks here and there, but I kind of like those. I think it gives it some character and lets it tell its story just a little bit. The base of this is so dark that I thought I would try putting a slightly lighter color on the top. So this is a golden pecan. I don't know if this is going to be good, but we'll give it a try. We can always darken it up. I am liking it. I put about 6 coats of spray shellac and another 3 coats of polyacrylic on this to seal the top. Just doing the final sand out smoothing here. Alright, repairs are all done. I'm happy with the finish. I'm going to do one final rub out here with some feed and wax. This is kind of my favorite finishing step here. Really brings out the nice finish here. Applying it with 4/0 wool. And that'll help get any last minute little nibs off. So we'll go over this thing very carefully and catch every little nook and cranny on it, and then we'll do a final rub out. And final rub out with a clean cotton towel just to get the excess wax off of there. And this thing is just about done. Oh, it's looking good. I got this 1920s little table off the side of the road from a neighbor's trash pile. It had broken spindles down here at the bottom. Needed a general refinishing. All the joints were loose on it. So we took it all apart, cleaned it up, made all the repairs, and refinished it. I think it's much improved.